The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NBA.
The Oklahoma City Thunder run the Memphis Grizzlies out of the gym with a fourth quarter avalanche.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great basketball game. This was a fun one. ESPN, yeah, and the Thunder without Chet Holmgren, I thought were a lot of fun to watch. I just thought it was a fun basketball game. There was like so much going on between Taylor Jenkins, and his, fun time with the refs, Shai's 40-piece, Aaron Wiggins saving basketball. I just thought it was a fun basketball game. I'm glad this one was on ESPN.
Yeah, I mean, this one lived up to the hype. Like you enter this stretch for the Thunder, and a team that I think is fair to say, Brandon, they've been a little bit bored, it appears, with their defensive lapse since the All-Star break, playing some uninspiring teams. Even Houston's a playoff team, but Monday they sure were not with all of their injuries. So this was a game that felt like it had juice. You know, you have a Memphis team that's lost 3 straight, trying to get back in the winning ways. Ja Morant returns on the road, national television, and the Thunder treated it as such. I mean, this was one of their best defensive starts and best defensive games we've seen. I think it's the best defensive effort we've seen since the All-Star break, and it just illustrated what the formula can be, and it's another way the Thunder can win, where this game, they weren't clicking. The Thunder weren't offensively for the majority of the contest, but their defense was able to generate really easy points. It was able to hang them around in the game, keep the game within a puncher's reach in either direction. With a Thunder lead, with a Grizzlies lead, the Grizzlies never led by more than 4. There were 8 lead changes, 7 ties, like a back and forth game. And then with that defense playing so consistently well, eventually, your offense did turn it on. You gained a 21-point advantage in the fourth quarter, and you won 120-103. So I thought that the defensive model, for all the concerns, all the questions since the All-Star break, they really showed you that they still have their fastball. It's just a very long season.
It is a long season, and we saw before the All-Star break, this was a historic defense, and I know that there is some concern because the defense hasn't been playing up to par, at least up to this team's standards as of late. So it was nice to see in a game that mattered, and this was the Thunder's 8th game in 13 nights. So this is a brutal stretch schedule-wise of games. It's easily a game on the road. You know, they could have not brought their full effort, but because of the circumstances, it being against, one of the top seeds in the West on national TV, Ja being back, and the Grizzlies, obviously, like you said, taking this game very seriously. The Thunder brought it tonight, holding the Grizzlies to 103 points tonight. They had 10 steals tonight, kind of vintage Thunder, hands everywhere tonight. And they did this without Chet and Caruso. So it was nice to see not only was the defense back, but they were able to do this without 2 of their very best, if not their best, defenders.
Yeah, I mean, no Chet, no Caruso, and they still turned it up to this level. And I think that in this game, I mean, the differences at times were just the 2 superstars on the floor. Like the 2 best players for each team, Shai, 41 points, Ja Morant, 24 points on 36% shooting and a -21, while SGA was a +19 in his minutes and shot 56% from the floor. Ja Morant was really bad on both ends, offensively, defensively, uninspiring night from him. A lot of complaining, not a lot of production. I thought that Lou Dort did a really good job on Ja. Lou Dort did not play well offensively, but even in this offensive slump from him and offensive struggle, 1 for 7 tonight, he was still a +35 in the box score, which is so strange to see. But SGA, Brandon, the MVP race, I think it's one of the most interesting races we've ever had in the NBA, just because I can't really tell you that Jokic doesn't have a strong MVP case. I think he does. I think if you vote for Jokic, it's not a bad vote. It's not a vote worthy of criticism. I think it would be a vote that changed the NBA, because we've never just kind of handed the MVP trophy to the best player in the league over and over and over again. And so if you do that, how are you ever going to stop voting for Jokic? Because he's going to do these same things next year. Whereas Shai, like, this guy is an all-time great scorer. This guy has brought the Thunder to a record here where they're 11 games up on the number 2 seed. They've been the only constant in the Western Conference. You've seen teams go from 2 to 5, 2 to the 7, into the play-in, out of the play-in. You've seen teams go from the play-in to the number 2 seed. Like, you've seen the Western Conference consistently shift, except for at the top, and that's because of SGA, because of his availability every game, because of his production every game, and because of games like this where he came in the fourth quarter after a Memphis 7-0 run and he took it over. I mean, the Grizzlies kind of felt good about themselves in that final frame, getting it down to a 3-point game, and the Thunder end up getting a 21-point lead, really on the back of what Shai can do.
Shai's the MVP. He's just the MVP. Like, to your point, if you're going to give it to Jokic, you're just giving it to Jokic because you think he's the best player in the NBA. I get it. His raw numbers are ridiculous. That's just what he does. But, after Russell Westbrook got the triple-double for a whole season, nobody really cared much the next few seasons. I'm not saying that, Russ's follow-up seasons to that triple-double season were MVP worthy or what Jokic is doing. I'm not saying that, but it kind of lost some of the luster. But with Jokic, for whatever reason, I get it. People just want to hand it to him. Why then wouldn't Michael Jordan have 10 MVPs?
Yeah,
Why wouldn't
exactly
LeBron have 8 or 9 MVPs if that's what we're doing? Shai this season has been unbelievable. He's leading the NBA in scoring. He's averaging 4 more points per game than Jokic is. He's averaging more steals. He's averaging more blocks as a guard, by the way, versus a center. He's averaging less turnovers. He's on a team that has an 11-game lead and has half as many losses as the Nuggets do. And he plays 2 ways. He plays defense and offense. He's elite both ways. And, Jokic is, let's be generous and say he's a neutral defender on that end. Yeah. So all that said, are you telling me that 4 more assists and 7 more rebounds, covers up all the difference in the standings and the win-loss record, and the fact that he's already won a few, and that Shai plays elite defense as well? I just don't think a handful of assists and rebounds, especially as a center, make up that difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that Shai should be the MVP, and this was a showcase game for him. Now, the beautiful thing about this stretch, Brandon, not only is it a stretch that I think will get the defense playing back to its normal self, and then it started tonight, and this is something that I wrote about for Thunder and SI, talked about on this show. This week is going to naturally bring you energy. For one, you're going to get to return home, and so you're going to finally have an elongated homestand for the first time in a month. And in that homestand, you're going to play Portland, who is a team that now has a legitimate play-in shot with Dallas's injuries. And they're already a scrappy team that plays hard every single night. And then Denver twice, which is a showcase for the MVP race between Shai, Jokic, and that back-to-back. And then when you hit the road again, you have a stretch here where you play 7 of your 7 games upcoming, including tonight, 6 of them playoff teams. That's going to naturally bring out the best in this Thunder team, kind of have one last push of a litmus test before you head into the postseason. So I think that the defense will be back, but I think that also this can be a week where Shai puts the MVP conversation to rest. Because if you go out there and dominate Denver twice with all eyes on you, the ABC Sunday afternoon game Sunday, and then the NBA TV game Monday, I think that he's won the award if that's the case.
It's a wrap. If the Thunder sweep those games, it's a wrap. Shai's winning. Shai's firmly in the lead. If you look at betting odds, if you look at straw polls from actual voters, he's in the lead. All he has to do is win those 2 games, and I think that it's a wrap for sure. If they split, I think that things stay the way that they are, and Shai continues to build the momentum and will continue to be the favorite. Now, if the Nuggets were to sweep both of those games, then I think, maybe for some voters that needed a tiebreaker or were undecided, that would sway probably some votes if the Thunder were to drop both of those to the Nuggets, and if Jokic were to outplay Shai in those games. I think that that's the one way things could, go different as far as what they are right now. As it stands right now, I think that Shai is firmly in the lead and should be in the lead. And if they at least split those games, it's his to lose. And if they sweep them, it's a wrap.
Yeah, so I mean, this game, like the biggest takeaways in our first two segments, the defense back showed you that they can still get back their fastball and dominate a game. Like this win was really built on the back of its defense. And then Shai, it's an MVP showcase for him tonight, and he dominated. Follows up a 51-point game with a 41-point game. There's not much more to say about the consistency.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Tonight, I'm looking at a ridiculous point spread in the Celtics-Sixers matchup. Boston beat Philly by 20 the last time they met, and FanDuel has taken note. FanDuel has the Celtics by 13.5. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
The Cleveland Cavaliers have won 12 straight games.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Cleveland Cavaliers win again. On Wednesday night, they beat the Miami Heat 112-107, and in doing so, the Cavs become the first team in the NBA to clinch a playoff berth. Of course, they clinched a postseason berth about a week and a half ago by virtue of locking in a spot in the top 10, which of course means nothing. And the Cavs now lock in a spot in the top 6. And this is, I do think, something to, if you're a Cavs fan, like it's something to be happy about, it's something to celebrate. But at the end of the day, I don't think that this is the biggest deal in the world. I think it's a really, really cool thing that on March 5th, they clinched a playoff spot. Like, it's so cool how early they clinched it, but this is not going to be their only achievement. This is not going to be their crowning achievement of the year. And as Donovan Mitchell spoke after the game against Miami on Wednesday, this was it's just part of the expectation. Like, this is a team that I don't think that anyone in that locker room would tell you that they expected to be 52-10 the way that they are, but they all expected to be a team that was in the playoffs. They all expected to be a team that had home court in the first round of the playoffs. Did they expect to have the 1 seed? Did they expect to be historically good? Probably not. And I think they would probably tell you that. Like, I don't think that's a thing where they're going to sit here and every team is going to say, we expect to go out there and win every game. And you do have to have that mindset, but I don't think that this is something that they expected to truly happen. And I think it is cool how early they've clinched a playoff spot. And it just kind of speaks to how historically good this team is, right? It is their third winning streak of 12 or more games. That's just the second time in NBA history a team has had 3 12-game winning streaks in a single season. It's ridiculous. And, on Wednesday night, it didn't necessarily feel like it. It feels a little off that they've won 12 straight games with how they've played in the last 3 games. So on Wednesday against Miami, they win 112-107. They looked good for like the first 7 or 8 minutes of the second quarter. I was looking at the box score during it from my seat inside Rocket Arena. I was looking at the online box score. I'm like, wow, the Cavs have outscored Miami 26-11 in the second quarter, and they opened up a 17-point lead. And then, of course, Miami closed out the quarter. It was 24-11. Miami closed out the quarter on a 16-3 run. And instead of the Cavs having a huge lead at halftime, they had a 4-point lead at halftime. And then they were trailing by 7 in the fourth quarter of this game. This was a game that the Cavs really had to scratch and claw and kind of, I guess, grit their way to a win. And it's fitting because it comes against a Miami team that is so built on the Heat culture stuff, right? Like, you think about Miami, you think about all of the things that they want to embody. And a lot of it is the stuff that will draw eye rolls. Some of it deservedly so, like the fact that they put Heat culture on a floor. Everyone make fun of them for that, please, especially when the Vice City stuff was right there and they waited until halfway through the season and getting made fun of relentlessly to go to it. But I digress. Miami is a tough team to play. They were an undermanned team, and they really did a good job, I think, of muddying this game up. We saw the Heat run a lot of zone in this game, and that was something that I found really interesting because Miami is a team that is known for running zone. And in talking to a couple of the players after the game, they said to me, they've kind of perfected it. Like they've been doing it for so long that it's something that it's hard to break down offensively. Even though the Cavs run a similar zone to the Heat, they don't run it as well as the Heat. And it's a different thing when you're running it versus when you're trying to attack it the way that the Cavs had to do so on Wednesday night. So I do think that they struggled with that, but ultimately they did what great teams do. And they found a way to win a game when they weren't at their best. No one is going to try and lie to you and say, yeah, this was the best game the Cavs had played, or they brought an A+ effort or had excellent energy, because none of those things are true. I thought that the Cavs on Wednesday night looked like a team that was playing its third game in 4 nights. And that's exactly what they were doing. They were playing their third game in 4 nights. And unlike some of the other 3 and 4 stretches that we've seen from the Cavs, where, they've been able to sweep through a couple of them because they've just been able to dismantle teams. They've been able to blow teams out. There have been games that haven't been close from the jump. And the Cavs had a chance to do that on Wednesday night, but they didn't take advantage of being up by 17. They let Miami back into the game. But you look at Sunday against Portland. It's a game where they're down big. They were down by 18 in the third quarter. They had to scratch and claw their way back and eventually win that game in overtime. You look at Tuesday night in Chicago, where they're down, I believe, by 15 points in that game. Maybe it was 17. I know it was at least 15 against Chicago on Tuesday night. And yes, they won the game by 22 points, but that was a game that was tied with 6 minutes and 45 seconds, 6 minutes and 47 seconds, technically, left in regulation. Like they had to really battle in that game. It was a back and forth game, and maybe it shouldn't have been. We can talk about the slow starts that the Cavs have been getting off to, but I do think that those 2 games and a little bit of the emotional hangover from the Boston win last Friday kind of have played into the Cavs maybe not playing their best. But I do think a sign of a great team is being able to find ways to beat solid teams. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that, they beat a great team in the Miami Heat or even a good team. Like, I think Miami is a very average NBA team this year, a team that's probably going to make the playoffs, maybe going to play the Cavs in the first round, and it will not be a very long series. I don't think that Miami Heat team is very good, but they are very scrappy. And I think when you face a team on the third game in 4 nights, you have an opportunity there. And I think the Miami Heat did a really good job of taking advantage of that. I thought that Donovan Mitchell made some big plays in this game. He finished the night with 26 points, had 7 boards, 5 assists. And Kenny Atkinson spoke before the game about Donovan's sense of knowing the moment and kind of knowing when he needs to step up, kind of knowing when he needs to let others take charge, and just like the ultimate leadership stuff with Donovan. And I thought that this was a good sign because the Cavs, none of the starters played great. I thought Max was really good in the fourth quarter, but I don't think he was necessarily great early on. Like, I think he struggled defensively in the first half of this game. And Evan Mobley, I thought, was good. He missed a bunch of free throws, but I do think that the zone probably affected him the most because that zone really does prevent teams from getting to the rim against Miami. And Mobley finished with 16 points. He was 7 of 10 shooting, but the problem with that stat line is that there were only 10 field goal attempts. Like that zone, the way that Miami has it built, the way they run it, and they do it so well, it makes it difficult for teams to funnel the ball on the floor where they want to in the hands of the players they want to have the ball. So instead of getting Evan Mobley the ball in the mid post, they're kind of getting DeAndre Hunter the ball in that spot. And DeAndre Hunter did a good job. He made a couple of those jumpers. I thought he made some good passes out of that spot. And, again, they didn't trade for DeAndre Hunter to beat the Miami Heat on March 5th, but is this a game they win without him? I don't know. It certainly doesn't stand out the way the Portland game does, but I'm not sure that they win this game without what he was able to do. And you would like, of course, for Mobley to have more than just 10 shot attempts. But I don't know that this was a thing of him not being aggressive enough or the Cavs just not being able to get him the ball in the right spots. I do think that this will be an interesting one to go back and watch and just really see exactly how everything that played out did play out in this game. But Max Strus made a couple of really big threes in the fourth quarter. He had that defensive stop on Bam Adebayo where he was asked after the game about defending Bam. Of course, those two former teammates, Max played with Bam in Miami. They went to the finals together, so they have a pretty strong built-in relationship there. And he said something to the effect of, maybe some people will say the ball slipped out of his hands, and the ball, like, there were four really weird, I guess it's not a turnover, but there were four really strange plays in the final couple of minutes that, like, was there oil on the basketball? There was the one pass that Donovan threw that went through Evan Mobley's hands. There was a pass that went through DeAndre Hunter's hands. There was the Bam Adebayo shot that, I don't think, or I don't know, I'm not positive if Max Strus got a hand on the ball, but the ball goes flying out of bounds. There was Donovan Mitchell, who he did get fouled, and I don't know how that Miami, who very clearly was trying to foul Donovan Mitchell, did not get called for a foul, and that really could have cost the Cavs there. But that ball goes out of bounds. Like, it was a very strange end to this game. But ultimately, I think it's a really good sign. It's a sign of a great team that when, like, what kind of game did the Cavs have on Wednesday night? They obviously didn't have their A game. I don't think they even had their B game. Like, I kind of think that they played, for the most part, a C- game against a probable playoff team. And yes, Miami's below 500. They're 29-32. Like, they're not a good team, but they played a C- game and still found a way to win. And I do think that there is something to be happy about there. If they play like this in the playoffs, obviously you're not going to be happy, but it's March 5th and they played like this and they found a way to win. And I think ultimately this is a team that has spoken a lot about learning through wins and taking away the lessons and making sure that the message does stick, despite the fact that it doesn't come along with a loss. I think that this could be a really good example, and this past stretch of basketball could be a really good example of that. Again, they're the first team in the NBA this season to clinch a spot in the playoffs. They are 52-10. There is a lot to like about them. Obviously, they are a true championship contender. They are doing things that have very, very rarely been done in the NBA before.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Tonight, I'm looking at a ridiculous point spread in the Celtics-Sixers matchup. Boston beat Philly by 20 the last time they met, and FanDuel has taken note. FanDuel has the Celtics by 13.5. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
If you play against a shorthanded team that you're expected to beat, can that win be considered impressive?
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast.
Frank, we have talked about the Bucks not having many impressive wins. They've had some important wins this season, and generally against a team with more players out than they have active, you wouldn't consider anything about that impressive. But for this Bucks team, I'm impressed with this win because of how professional it was. A season high in points scored for the Bucks with 137, largest margin of victory for this team with 30 points. This is the Bucks team on the second night of a back-to-back, and we haven't really seen them have many comfortable wins against lesser competition this season. I mean, a couple weeks ago, we just watched them go into clutch time against the Wizards and win that game by 3. This is the Bucks team that we saw go 1-3 against the Nets this season. And on the second night of a back-to-back, they put together a impressive win over a Mavericks team that I honestly feel sorry for, but I think that's what made all of this really impressive because of how professional the win was for the Bucks.
Well, Camille, you know who's got two thumbs and is never going to feel sorry for Jason Kidd? This guy. I feel sorry for Mavericks fans. I feel sorry
Absolutely.
for, some of those kind of folks around the Mavs orbit. But yeah, I mean, obviously, let's just say the Bucks caught the Mavs when their 2 games of the season series at a very good time. They go in and it was already obviously a diminished version of the Mavs. They've been missing all their big guys for a while. Moses Brown made an appearance in Dallas when we saw them last. Moses Brown is now back in the G League because his 10-day contract ran out, which fine by us because he actually was pretty good for them in that game. And so, yeah, I think last night, Justin and I were speculating about who was going to play for the Bucks tonight. And I know it's interesting, right? Because I think in the back of our minds, obviously, we're all thinking about the playoffs. How do you make sure you rest guys enough and you avoid injuries, which of course has been, kind of an ultra real issue for us as Bucks fans. Right. And so my official prediction was I thought Giannis would play. I thought Dame might be the one guy that sat out, especially given the way his eye looked after the game last night. But who knew, Camille? We now know you only need one eye in order to be one of the most deadly perimeter assassins in the history of the NBA. Dame was fantastic. Giannis was, unstoppable offensively. And, if they're both going to play, I don't think you could have drawn up really a better script. They both had really good starts. I mean, it took actually it took kind of until late in the first quarter for the Bucks to actually get a little bit of breathing room against.
The defense was a little casual early on in the game.
Yeah. Honestly, the defense was a little casual for 48 minutes. I would say it just didn't
couldn't
really
score
matter
anymore.
Yeah, exactly. The Mavs just, I think were fundamentally kind of limited. I think Giannis, this was one of those games where I think Giannis kind of picked his spots defensively, and I'm totally fine with that given the circumstances. He really didn't need to go all out defensively for Giannis, but yeah, I mean, for both those guys to go for 30 plus and 26 minutes for Dame, under 25 minutes for Giannis.
Love that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like vintage Giannis, right? Thinking back to, some of the Bud era games where he was like, he only averaged 30.9 minutes in one of those MVP seasons, which is still incredible. So, yeah, just, I think a professional effort, as you were alluding to last night. Maybe that game was a little harder than you would have liked against the Hawks. As we've said, the Bucks have not been a great road team. They pull out that win. They buckled down. They made plays when they had to. Dame, Giannis led the way last night. And tonight, just on a quick turnaround. The thing you always worry about, right, especially with a guy like Dame, given where he is at his age, I think back to comments like Bill Simmons has made on his podcast about like last year where he was kind of saying, oh, Dame's sort of at the point where, he just can't play at that really high level, 3 nights out of the week, right? It's like couple nights a week, two out of the 3 games a week, like sure, but like your body just stops allowing you to be at the level that you're used to when you're sort of at your peak. And I think Dame deserves a ton of credit because I think the night consistency this year has been really impressive. And I mean, I just think back to before the All-Star break where he had like 83 points in 24 hours against. Who was it? The Warrior. The game they lost against the Warriors was the second night. I'm like blanking on who they played the night before when he had 40.
I can't remember who it was the night before.
I know they won the game. My mind's escaping me right now. But I remember when that happened and Giannis was out, thinking, man, like this is really impressive stuff from Dame to be able to be operating at this level and bringing it the way that he was bringing it. And he's had been carrying some knocks. As well, with kind of the hamstring. He's had calf stuff at various points this season as well. So yeah, I mean, just the shooting that he came out with was super impressive. And yeah, I mean, for Giannis it's kind of felt like in the third quarter, he said like, all right, let me get my 20,000 points. 20. And then he just kind of kept going. And so for him to, just kind of get his work in and then be able to watch the rest of the game was really good. And, other than that, I mean, like the starting lineup was like everybody was like plus 25 to 30, right? So they put up, they fit the lineup data for them was really good. And then, once again, the kind of that other group was also impressive and did the job, right? And we'll talk about KPJ, but KPJ, Kuzma, and then Jericho Sims, kind of just another night where I think it's been a really he's made a really big difference, right? You compare the way they looked without Bobby Portis before the All-Star break when they had that really tough spell when they were clearly undersized, and now just keeping Sims out there, just offering that size, I think has been a really nice boost. And the Bucks have not played small since the Kuzma arrival. Like I think they've leaned into being big, and obviously I think the results have been really positive. So schedule ain't getting easier from here, but again, banking these wins when they can and doing it without much drama. Let's just say that's something that I have not started to take for granted having watched this team over the last year and a half.
That's a fact. And when you mention like what's coming up for the Bucks, like they have the Magic on Saturday, they first have a back-to-back, and then the rest of the month of March is really tough. You got Orlando Saturday, then you have Cleveland at home, the second half of the back-to-back at the Pacers, then you come home and you play against the Lakers, the Pacers, the Thunder. That Pacers Thunder game is a back-to-back. Then you have a West Coast road trip where you play at the Warriors, at the Lakers, at the Kings, at the Suns, at the Nuggets. You come back home and you finish the month off against the Knicks and the Hawks. So it's going to be tough for them. And for posterity's sake, the two games that you were referencing when Dame was going crazy, it was the 76ers and then the Warriors back to back, where he had 43 against the Sixers and then 38 against the Warriors. But one-eyed Dame was out here hooping at efficiency levels that I did not expect. He knocked down his first 4 threes, and the fourth three that he hit was the one that actually had me go like, oh my God, because it was, I believe, Kevin Porter Jr. and Dame kind of like wrapped around him on the perimeter. And Kevin Porter Jr. found him. Dame's kind of like still fading to the right from the motion of him wrapping around Kevin Porter Jr. His defender is closing out left. Dame made that shot look so easy, and because it was in rhythm for him, but it's not an easy shot. And that 3-pointer put the Bucks up by like 9 points. And after that, they really just continued to pour it on.